Charles, good afternoon. How
Hello
are you?
again. Hello again, Dan. I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I'm good. Probably a little bit more settled than you are
Yes,
today.
I
You've been running around a little bit.
a little bit of running around, a little bit of fun, a little bit of work, a little bit of running errands and projects with friends. It's been a crazy day.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm in my car. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah. So we're continuing on here with section 6 on fear, and this was full of, I guess, best way to put it, just things that I struggle with quite a bit. Um, and as it relates to fear and anxiety, and a lot of these chapters, they hit home, and at the same time, they also, her suggestions have definitely helped me.
Yeah, likewise. I love this chapter. It's probably one of the main reasons I wanted to read this book was for this chapter, because as we've talked about before, in a very broad sense, if you think of anxiety as just the fear that, what if tomorrow's not okay? What if something happens and I'm just not okay tomorrow?
Mhm.
It for any reason. If you want to broadly define anxiety that way, that's the way I do. And then absolutely, that's something I struggle with, and it's really something that I don't know anybody who doesn't from time to time
Mhm.
deal with that feeling of, oh, what if this doesn't work out? What if this isn't okay? What am I going to do then?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I like this one because this is one of the first of a few stories she goes through in the book where it seems like her now husband, basically tortures her with her fear of heights. And it
Yeah.
seems like, there's multiple instances where, they're doing something together, and she's gritting her teeth and going along for the ride. And it's because, she's doing this with her husband, and this is the first example of them. I guess they were on vacation in Italy, went up to the Leaning
Oh
Tower of
yeah.
Pisa,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she walks, and what was nice is she kind of walks through on a really deep level, what her brain was doing, what she was thinking, what her body was doing, how it was reacting to that fear, and then how she was kind of processing it with at the time, and then afterwards she goes back and says, okay, now if I were to go through that experience where I was terrified going to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, knowing what I know now, this is how I would do things. And it's a great way of being able to apply all of these concepts that she's talking about to each of our own individual situations, and just understand, our brain is doing what it's intended to do, and our body reacts in the way that it's intended to do when we are having these fears.
Right. It's just important to remember that in our current context, all these things that feel life threatening really aren't life threatening. And we can much more often than not address them and be okay.
Yeah.
And not it's not the saber-toothed tiger outside the cave. It's not the poisonous snake in the grass most of the time, but that's what our body is still conditioned to react to, and parts of our brain too.
Yeah, and I like the way she phrased our fear response in terms of that is completely natural, but she likened it to a smoke alarm, where
Right.
basically it's going to go off, it's going to do its job, whether you're burning toast or whether the house is on fire, and
Right.
you just don't
Exactly.
know what it's going to be. So once you kind of realize that, hey, this is just the way my body's reacting, this is a normal response, that's the first step to kind of slow down and go, all right, maybe there's some other explanation, and maybe there's some information that I'm missing. And she goes into a little bit of detail in for those examples of how we have these biases about fear, that in the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to keep a straight head even about the fear you're experiencing when you're in the middle of it, because it's so hard to know if it's a proportional response to the thing you're actually dealing with in the moment, or if, am I taking this a little too seriously, or am I not taking it seriously enough? And really the only way you can calibrate that is by kind of going through and surviving things on, for your whole life. And then ideally, if you're wise, you're able to let that information in and get better at deciding, okay, what's an emergency and what's not an emergency.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And she talks about really calming the body first through some breathing, before trying to do anything else, before trying to think different thoughts or whatever else that is, and just basically, kind of control the physical sensations first before you start to try to change some of your thoughts around it.
Yeah, the mind body connection is such a big part of this book, and she does such a great job of dispelling any of these notions that some of us, particularly us fellows, like to have about our mind being in control and our body being sort of subject to our mind. It's like, no, it's really a partnership. And if you treat it any other way, it's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah. And I look at it as, communication is the important part here, is really understanding, what your body is saying, what your brain is doing, and then communicating back to. So you're listening to your body and your brain, and then you are the other part of your brain, your mind, whatever you think that might be, to notice that you're communicating back to your body and your brain in a way. You're slowing your breathing down. Maybe you're starting to think some different thoughts, but you're also being, you're being supportive, you're being kind, you're being gentle, but you're also doing things that are believable. You're saying things, you're thinking things that are believable. And she kind of touches on that in the next chapter, that our brain is really like a scientist, and it looks at our experiences as experiments, and whether they're positive or negative, that the results of those experiences are what becomes our reality, is what we actually believe. And it's not just simply saying, hey, I'm safe. There needs to be some sort of experience that dictates that you can believe that you actually are safe. Right. And
you've got to make a good case to your body for your body to believe it. And then you can get into a positive feedback loop instead of a negative one. Let's talk about what happens when we try to soothe our anxiety in an unhelpful way. One thing we like to do is just bury our head in the sand and pretend like the problem's going to go away.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Hasn't so far. I mean, there's definitely a movement of folks, particularly in the political class, that do like to just ignore issues as long as possible, and then maybe that'll be a problem for the next person that gets elected to deal with. But we all do that to one degree, right?
Sure, of course, yeah. I mean, because that's easy just to look away, to she kind of goes through all these different strategies that we have, that anxious avoidance, maybe as soon as, and the thing is, we get relief as soon as we say no to something. As soon as we say, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to avoid it, we get instant relief. And then that starts to build a really bad habit in our brain, and this routine, and that becomes our comfort zone then. And so trying to do anything new, it becomes even more difficult, because we're used to just we're used to avoiding those situations. And that's just what we do. That's where we live. That's our comfort zone now.
Right. And it does feel much, much better in the short term. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse the longer the thing, tends to mount and get bigger.
Yeah. And, I know, and I do, different forms of this too. So for example, sometimes anticipation, she talks about here, where we rehearse, anticipate, a number of different worst case scenarios that might happen in a feared situation. So you think, all right, well, I'm going to be prepared. But what happens is you end up becoming hyper vigilant, and you excessively worry, and you do that without actually planning things constructively to, in a healthy way. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, so have I. And in our brains, when we do avoid something, and put it off, and then it's time to actually deal with it. Yeah, there's much greater of a chance that our response to it is not going to be what it would have been. We won't have the quality of response to it that we would have had if we dealt with it in a timely manner, because we wouldn't have all that additional stress and additional guilt over procrastinating sitting on top of our shoulders when we're actually trying to deal with the problem.
Yeah. And one of these in here, I wanted to ask you about, and obviously you don't have to talk about it at all, or whatever. But I was wondering if you feel reassurance seeking applies to you in any form, where basically you're looking for a loved one, and when you're feeling a little bit anxious, and then you start to develop kind of a habit and a routine, kind of depending on that person, and then you start to create a dependency on that person. And I know, I mean, I've been in that situation myself. And it's hard. Like, when I was younger, a couple girls I, dated in college and stuff. Yeah. I went everywhere with them. And even after college, and I feel like I kind of lost a little bit of balance with other parts of my life by having a little bit of that dependency that I built up, and I just wondered if you felt you've ever run into that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when I'm in a relationship with somebody, like, a lot of us do, I tend to fixate on that person at the expense of other interests, hobbies, friendships, things like that. And absolutely, I've been known to do that. And then that does put, an unhealthy level of pressure on that person to be, your everything, fill in the blank, whatever. That's just not really how us humans were made, where you just get all of your needs met through a single partner and not have any friendships or colleagues or, people that engage in similar hobbies as you. I mean, you got to have those kind of people in your life as well. Otherwise, you're just asking too much from one person and putting too much pressure on them. But I do have a tendency to do that, particularly in new relationships.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to find someone we could get on the podcast or find a book that kind of digs into that a little bit more, just to provide some tools, because I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us will kind of abandon our friendships or just not pay as much attention to friendships when we get into relationships. I know both guys and girls that do that. And so, maybe just some simple tools or reminders, or just ways we can have conversations with people that we are in those dependent relationships with, that will be useful and not cause an argument or cause problems, or I think that I would like to dig into that a little bit more. I think that would be helpful for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think we could probably find somebody who's qualified to talk about that. I will. I'll make a note to do so. Let's talk about this next chapter that gets into the real meat and potatoes, the real concrete, how to calm anxiety right now, which is a great chapter title, right?
Yeah.
And I like the first exercise on, well, some of the things you said, you can just, start to count your breaths, and that helps. That's one of the things that I do during meditation, count my inhales and my exhales. And just by keeping that tally going, it could help me focus a little bit more on my breath than just having every thought that wants to pop in. But I like this exercise of square breathing. Have you tried this yet?
I have, but not adding her little twist on the end of that one. I've just done the count of four times. I've done that a little bit here and there, but I've not added her little twist to that, which I liked.
Yeah, I like the idea that she says, find something that is square or rectangular, and then just sort of trace it with your eyes while you do your 4 breaths at a 4 count. And I mean, there's where are you that you can't find something to focus on that has 4 sides, right?
Right.
From a sign, your phone, whatever.
A doorway, a computer monitor. And I think that's a great addition. It's getting more of your body. It's getting your senses involved with that breathing, and it helps you not get as distracted. So, our monkey brains, when we're trying to meditate, and it'll go off. I know mine jumps really quickly away from my breath. And this kind of, doing that, I did practice that with the square breathing, looking around it, a monitor or a picture from the other day. Yeah. And it does keep you more engaged.
Yeah, and I've even done it when I've been driving, because every road sign pretty much is a rectangle. So if you're getting stressed about something while you're driving, you can do it then too. As long as
I'm glad you decided not to meditate while you're driving. So
yeah,
I guess.
Step one, close eyes.
That's funny.
Okay, and then the second thing she mentions is just getting up and moving, and really any kind of walk, exercise, whatever. It's definitely hard for your body to maintain the same exact state if you drastically change the amount of moving that your body's doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, she likens it to a rocket ship who, where it's not moving, right? The rockets are going off, and what will happen to the ship if the rocket's going off and it's like being held down, right?
Right.
It's going to start vibrating and shaking, and our bodies are very similar. We'll start to shake. She talks about, we'll sweat, we'll pace around the house, and that's because our fight or flight hormones were all triggered by this anxiety. And so, our body needs something to do with it. And it's interesting. Again, she puts it in a way that made it kind of hit home for me. And I mean, I always, fan of, doing some sort of movement to feel better, but it didn't occur to me that the exercise would actually get rid of and dampen and buffer all of those hormones and all of that got released,
Right.
and it makes complete logical sense. And of course that makes sense. But when she said it, I was like, oh, wow, and now you can kind of return to baseline. You're burning up. Your body's also creating a lot of energy because it's preparing to either fight or run. And so,
right.
Yeah, you need to do something with that. She also talks about how important it is to be proactive by exercising every day, or on the days when you're not feeling anxious, because then you're basically setting yourself up for a better day tomorrow, and you're less likely to I think you're less likely to feel that anxiety. But if you do, you've already built up those routines and those habits on how to handle it.
Yeah, that section I find, again, it was only like 2 pages long, but it was just completely full of stuff you can do when you're in the moment that will let you address what could go on to be a big problem, and you can kind of nip it, if not in the bud, certainly close to the bud, and deal with it before it gets out of hand. Which it's one of the dangers of having unchecked anxiety that you don't know how to deal with is you don't know how you're going to respond to it in the moment if you're not used to telling yourself, okay, I do experience anxiety. Here's what it makes me feel in my body and my mind. And next time it happens, here are the kinds of things I should think about doing. Where if you don't spend any time doing that work, then it's much more likely to sneak up on you, catch you, and you're going to make a big mistake that's going to, potentially have a negative impact on a relationship that you find important, personal or professional.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much different than having like an emergency escape plan that you never rehearse. Right. You never practice, in the heat of the moment. You don't want to have to think. You just want to execute it.
Yeah. And so, thinking on these matters is a great idea so that when it does happen, you're not going to, your brain is not going to go straight to some great self-help book that you read a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It'd be great if it did, but it usually is not going to. So you've got to spend a lot of time in this material, talking to it with your friends, talking to it with, possibly a mental health professional. And the more you make it part of your life, the more likely it is that it's going to be there when you need it, which is, just like exercise. You've got to be ready with knowing how and when to exercise if you want to be able to rely on exercise when things get tough. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's don't make it harder than it is. It's incredibly simple. All you need to do is really go, hey, look, I'm going to try to control my breathing and maybe go for a walk.
Right.
You don't have to, come up with some huge, sophisticated type of, call chain or whatever it is, no, it just calm yourself physically a little bit and, give yourself some time and space.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what to do when these thoughts that can feel out of control, these anxious thoughts pop in, and how we can handle that. One of the things she goes to first in this chapter is basically treating our thoughts the way we've learned to treat our emotions, which is they are not completely accurate versions of reality. Our thoughts and our emotions are telling our brain what we think we need to know to survive in that moment. They're not telling us the objective truth.
Right. They are not facts. Right. there.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And it's good that she defines what a thought is. So we really understand, hey, that they're actually guesses, they're stories. She goes into detail. She says their memories, their ideas, and their theories. And it's just basically, like you said, it's just something that our brain is offering as a best guess as to what's going on. And there's very limited information. And again, it's very arrogant of us to think that that is exactly what's going on. And that is reality. And I feel a lot of us get into this mode, and I'm definitely guilty of this too, where it's just like, oh, well, this is just the way it is, because this is what I thought.
Right.
And it's a little bit of, it's actually a very arrogant type of perspective to have, and it's not doing you any favors.
Yeah, it feels like in the moment, it feels like it's keeping us alive, but really, yeah, it could do that at the expense of, some of our most important relationships and the relationship we have with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's your brain saying, okay, under worst possible conditions, here's the thing that you should probably be focusing on. Mm-hmm. But it's often not worst possible conditions, but that's still where our brain is telling us to focus on.
Right. And that's why she makes another emphasis of why these aren't facts, is because, the worst case scenario is what our body is telling our brain is what we're facing, because of the hormones that got released, our physical state, our blood pressure, our heart rate, how hydrated we are, how much we've eaten, our blood sugar level, what we're sensing, our memories, past experiences, things like that. So all of those things influence our thoughts. And that's reason enough to realize these aren't facts. This isn't an accurate depiction of reality.
Yeah. And then she goes into some different categories of the ways that our brain will tell us stories that are not exactly what we need to know is going on, but can sort of, go too far to keep us safe. Catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, personalization, just stuff where we make the problem more about us and bigger than it actually is, so that we feel like we'll be able to get those hormones kick in that will keep us safe in case of the worst case scenario, that everybody's out to get us, or this fight I had with my boss is going to be the end of my career, whatever it is. It's where we've got these signals coming in from our body saying this is the worst thing that it could possibly be. You better be ready to deal with it.
Yeah. And then I like at the end of this chapter, she kind of gets into some of the solutions here. So one of them is concept of reframing. Right. And that I learned a similar type of technique, basically just called setting your intention before something. And I learned it from a strategic coach from Dan Sullivan. And before, we used to have quarterly meetings, and before each meeting, we'd go through a couple of worksheets. And one of the questions was, what's your intention for these next 3 days? And you'd set your intention, and just simply doing that, just all it does is it sets your brain up to then look for the things that you've set out in your intention. And a lot of times those are good things. Those are positive things, what you're trying to get out of that meeting. Now, that's not exactly the same as reframing, but it's a similar type of concept, where basically you are choosing to focus on certain things that are certain pieces of information that are in this case be more positive than the things that are causing you the anxiety.
Yeah, it is possible to, once you started a difficult new project at work, that you're, uncertain whether you're going to be able to perform to the level that you need to, you can think of it in terms of, okay, this is great news, because once I complete this project, I will know exactly how good at my job I actually am. Mm-hmm. And that can be a great source of potential confidence when you do what you have to do to get the job done.
Yeah. And I really like the way she really goes into a little bit of into some detail here in terms of, and what really hit home for me is, it's not getting rid of, it's not acknowledging, it's not denying that there are some risks here, right? You're not fooling yourself and saying, oh, everything's going to be totally fine here. But what you are doing is you are taking that fight or flight response, and you're basically removing or lessening the flight part, avoidance, the I don't want to deal with it, the run away, right? The denial, and you're focusing a little bit more on the fight response, and where it's more of a controlled type of fight. So you're getting ready to engage. You are now, you're kind of getting a little bit motivated, and it's a little bit, it's in a similar way of saying, hey, before, if you've got, let's say you've got a fear of speaking in front of people, public speaking, and instead of saying, the physical feelings you have are the same, whether you're excited about something or whether you're scared about something.
Right.
And it's a similar type of thing. So, you change your mind and say, okay, well, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And,
right.
and, so I think I really liked it when she said, you're framing it more towards a controlled fight.
Yeah. I like that as well. And the idea that that reframing gets easier when you understand the things that are going to be easy, the things that are going to be difficult, and the things that you're going to do anyway, because those are what reflect your values and what matters the most to you. So,
yeah,
it's like when I was reading David Goggins' book, you don't stop when you're tired, you stop when you're done. And when you decide that is your core value, that you don't stop when you're tired, you just stop when you're done, then you end up running, 100-mile ultra marathons and things like that, because you're committed, what you find important and you're committed to it. And, thank goodness the world has people like that, because I'm not one of them.
She goes into, tying it to your identity, and that's your why for doing things. And that really helps with that. And, one of the other personal development coaches I listened to, Brooke Castillo from Life Coach School, she talked a lot about transforming your identity when you want to start a new behavior. And so, whether it's you want to lose some weight, or for example, and you kind of put yourself in that situation and you say to yourself, well, I may not be this person who is, super fit and, and super healthy, but, you kind of think of somebody in your mind, somebody through your experience that is that way. How would they behave in this situation? You ask yourself, would they, would they be skipping dessert, or, would they be getting up early before work to go to the gym? What kind of, somebody who is super healthy and fit, what would they do? And then she says, pretend you are playing a role. You are studying to be an actor or actress, and playing somebody who's super healthy and fit. How would they behave? How would they act? What would they say? How would they carry themselves? And you start to do those things a little bit. Now you're using, you're acting the part and you are experiencing it. And now that starts to become a little bit more believable to your brain. And that starts to cascade into becoming your identity as well.
Yeah, it was super slick. I found this chapter to be very, very useful, and it all resonated a lot with me up until the point where she gets into the next chapter of this of this section.
Yeah.
Where fearing the inevitable, and I think specifically most of what she's talking about is people who are sort of preoccupied with a fear of illness or death, and that's never been my issue. I've never really been one to focus or spend a lot of time thinking about that. I'm wondering what your experience is with that. Do you have any struggles where you kind of get in a place where you focus on that, or not really?
Yeah. Fortunately for not very long, but I have moments where, I get like these, every once in a while, like a sharp, sheer panic of like, oh, I'm not living forever, and then, sometimes, most of the time, fortunately, it's a short-lived thing. And I think about, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And let's just, make the most of what I have and where I am. And so, I do have those moments from time to time, for sure.
Yeah, it occurs to me rarely, but I never really have a problem with, I guess, as she says in the previous chapter, I never have a problem with letting the spotlight sort of sit on those thoughts for too long, that they become intrusive or disruptive or distracting. But it is weird to think about, depending on, what you believe spiritually and all that. We all know that there was a long amount of history before us that we didn't interact with, that we didn't know was going on. And there's a good chance that there's going to be a long bit of history after we're done that we're not going to interact with or know what's going on. And so we only have this little section right in the middle of those two that we get to enjoy or tolerate things. And that's kind of our decision. But yeah, I mean, I think it is a good chapter for, I mean, you know, look, I'm judging the level of the application of all the other stuff in this book and how easy it is to apply in a very clear way. So I have confidence that her section on, you know, the fear of the inevitable is probably going to be the same way. If that's something you struggle with, I would highly recommend you give that chapter a read and see if that's something that can help you out with that.
Yeah, at the end, she's got a series of questions that will walk you through a lot of, you know, I guess give you a lot of answers here, you know, in terms of, you know, kind of writing things out and getting your thoughts and feelings out on paper and looking at, you know, things such as, what are your beliefs about death and, you know, how they're different from others and, talk about your past experiences and your loss. Cause a lot of times when somebody close to us dies, you know, that brings up our own mortality. We have our own thoughts about that. But, you know, she also kind of helps us understand the acceptance of the inevitable of death, is often a driver to, living a more fulfilled life.
That's very true.
And rather than just giving up on life.
Yeah, definitely. You can go in either direction with that, right? By taking on the ownership of how fleeting life is. It can, some people it can motivate to do amazing things and other people it can depress them. But, it's all about framing it like we talked about before.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Dan. So
yeah,
this was a deep chapter, but deep section, but a good one.
Mm-hmm.
We are recording this episode a little bit in advance because you're going on vacation, and so I will talk to you in 2 weeks for the next podcast instead of the usual 1 week break. Are you you want to share with everybody where you're going?
Yeah, I'm going to my backyard. I'm going to hang out there I'm going to visit some friends. I'm going to go visit family up in Ocean City, Maryland. I haven't been there in a while. So, probably like 20 years. So it's, we're looking forward to doing that. And,
is Ocean City known for its beaches? Do they have a nice beach there?
I think so. Yeah, I think they have some decent beaches. They're really known for a boardwalk. So they have a really nice boardwalk, a lot of activities there. So we're fortunate enough to stay near there. We're going to walk around. Getting up there from Florida is not an easy task by any means. There's no direct flights, and the closest flights, land in Baltimore. That's a 3-hour drive. So I really love my family because I'm going and I'm spending an entire day traveling to go see them. So
good for you.
Hopefully they hear this and buy us a coffee for it.
That would be nice. All right. Well, you should have a great time. I hope your time in Ocean City is as much fun as my time at your house will be.
Thanks. And, I want to talk to you about that too. What do you know? What day you think you're going to be here, so I can turn the hot tub on for you? Because it's not on right now.
No, don't worry about that. I was just kidding. I'm probably not going to come over, but if I do come over, I'll come over the day before to turn the hot tub on. Okay.
All right. Yeah. No, you're totally welcome to do that. It's going to take a few hours to warm up. It's not one of these fancy ones. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's it takes a day.
Okay. I will keep that in mind.
So any plans for this weekend for you or for this week coming up?
Rehab my back some more. Try to move around as much as I can tolerate and lay in bed as much as I need to. And I think I'm going to finish. I'm a couple episodes into The Terminal List on Amazon with Chris Pratt.
Oh,
and trying to stay on my back and get it to feel better. I will probably finish watching the first season of that show, given a few more hours of bedtime.
All right. Has the foam roller helped at all?
I haven't been home to use it since yesterday, and I did use it a little bit yesterday, and the medium density definitely felt better than the last one I had that was like super hard as a rock. So I appreciate your recommendation on that. And I do have the one with the little textures on it too. It's not just flat, it's got the little nubs on it.
I like that. Yep. Feels good.
That feels good. I've got my heating pad with me. That feels good. I've got some kind of CBD ointment that numbs everything, and then I've got my non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So I'm doing everything I can to keep myself getting better. But I don't have many plans other than trying to nurse myself back to full health.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe just do some of the body weight movements, that we talked about before, in the gym.
Yeah, I will try hanging. Yeah, for sure. I'll try hanging from from my pull-up bar, and maybe seeing if doing some air squats would make me feel better too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man.
All right.
Well, this was good. Appreciate you making time. All right, man.
I will see you later. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.